Welcome to Younger Older. I'm Dave Wager, your host, and today I'm with an old friend, Don Shire, who, can I say, accidentally started the Don Shire Ministries, and now you're
Sounds good to me.
An older guy that's looking back going, wow, look what God has done.
Yeah, I would say what I'm doing today, I did not start out to do.
No.
It's just the way the Lord has led.
Yeah. We've been friends for many years before he lived up here in the North Woods, and he was a neighbor here at Birch Ranch and Nicolet Bible Institute for a while, and now you live in Virginia?
I live in Bedford, Virginia.
Where you kind of home base and go all over the world.
Yeah. You know, my neighbors in Bedford do the same thing my neighbors did when I lived across the street from Birch Ranch here.
Oh.
Where you going? They're always wondering, where are you going next?
There you go.
They know another trip is coming up.
So what is Don Shire Ministries? I mean, we hear it's called DSM.
Well, I call it DSM International. We're registered in the state of Wisconsin as Don Shire Ministries. It's kind of funny how that name came about, because we had ideas like Faith in Action and things like that, but this is before you could do searches on the internet.
Oh.
And so we were having to pay a lawyer to do searches on all these names we were coming up with. And the bill started getting pretty high, and he kept saying, sorry, it's already taken. So finally I said, well, let's call it Don Shire Ministries. No one wants that name.
There you go.
And so that's what we're registered as. And that's what it's been up until just the last few years. And the ministry has grown so much through the years. And I'm getting a little bit older. I plan on doing this until I can't. But the fact is, we have orphans, we have widows that we're supporting in various parts of the world. And what happens after Don? And so I asked the Lord about that. I said, you know, should I just raise the children that we have and just kind of wind things down and then retire, or what should I do if it's going to continue? Lord, I need help. And almost immediately, Dave, the Lord started sending help, and they're missionaries with our organization, but they have to raise their own support.
Right.
And everyone kept asking, who's Don Shire? Who's this Don Shire? Well, DSM International is a lot easier for them to present.
There you go.
It sounds like more than a one-man show, because it's not that anymore.
Right.
And so we're still Don Shire Ministries, but DBA, doing business as DSM International.
Good.
And so anyone watching that wants to look us up can look us up at dsminternational.org. Don't do .com, or you'll get the Des Moines Airport.
Okay. Yeah. Well, you know, it's interesting. So many times in life, and we've been friends long enough that I think I've watched you accidentally get into ministry and accidentally go places, and all of a sudden God is doing some tremendous things. And really, there's a lot of times I use you for an example, maybe not your name, but the idea of getting up every day, doing what's in front of you, being faithful with what God's given you, and see where it goes.
Yeah. I really can't claim. I have no claim to fame as far as if I were to write a book on how to start a ministry or how to build one, because ours has just been so different than what I've seen in other ministries. Basically, I just said, Lord, if you can use me, show me where. And Dave, you knew me before that, when I was running a business in Chicago, and things seemed to be going fine. As I had a limousine taking me to work every day, and nice house out in the country, and the Lord just kind of grabbed a hold of me, and I just knew that I was not living a life that I should. I wasn't living the way I was raised to live, and then I started really seeking what is it that's missing, and it was that real personal trust in God. And I had accepted Christ as a kid, but I will tell you, it was as an adult when I finally realized I needed to just put all my trust in Jesus and quit trusting myself, quit trusting others. Just, God, all of my hope is in you. And Lord, if you can use me, you show me where. I'll run a business. I'll do whatever. And almost immediately doors began to open. through some missionaries I met through Silver Birch here, Mike Dawson and Renee at the time, who eventually passed from cancer with the Lord now. But Mike was a great encouragement to me as I watched him and his ministry in the jungles of Venezuela and observed his family. And I would say that probably I learned more of the foundational skills of ministry from them. I asked Mike's parents one time, I said, what advice would you give a young missionary like me? I was young then.
Yep.
And immediately, without even hesitation, they said, if God calls you to do something, he's calling you for life. You just treat it that way, that he's calling you for life. And they said the biggest difference between missions when they started and missions now is that when they started, they bought a one-way ticket on a freight liner for their family to get to Venezuela. They didn't have money to get home. And Joe said, we had family at home where we'd love to have been at weddings and funerals and so forth. And he said, one thing that was kind of neat is he said, my family's always put me down for coming down here. He said, but my children are serving God. And he said, I look at some of their families, and it's not quite the same. But they just said, serve as though God is calling you to do it for life. And I watched them, and they served faithfully. Many times I think I would have quit if I were them.
Yeah.
Some of the things that they've had to go through, but they've been so faithful, and then served to their last days there. And they said what we see today is that young people, they come and they serve, but then times get a little bit tough, or there's something going on at home, and they're on the next plane going home, and then they never come back. Mm-hmm. And it's so easy to quit these days, where we didn't have that kind of a choice. And so I've often wondered, maybe we need to make it harder on our missionaries when they go somewhere, that they have to stay for a while.
Yeah, and the fruit down there right now with Mike and what's going on is absolutely incredible. When you look at what's going down right now in the jungle. Now Mike's our age.
Yep.
In that respect. So this is a second generation, but older now.
And I've been up and down that river with Mike doing evangelism. I remember going into a village one time with the Jesus film, and we had a generator on the boat. We ran a long extension cord up into the village, and they had never seen a movie before.
Wow.
And so we put the Jesus film on. I remember this witch doctor, he just kept getting up and looking behind the sheet, trying to figure out where all that stuff was coming from. And then I remember all the sheep running across the screen, and everyone's, that's what the rest of the world is like. Just abundance of meat. And I had no idea that was trying to mimic 2,000 years ago.
Right.
But I do remember this witch doctor. He kept saying, "You guys can leave. It's okay." He was real nice to us, but he kept saying, "You guys can leave." And so finally Mike said, "What are you so excited? Why are you so anxious for us to leave?" He said, "Well, when you guys came in, all of my spirits left, and they're out in the jungle crying right now, and they won't come back until you guys leave."
Wow.
Yeah. So anyway, that's some of my background. As a matter of fact, if you're a person that can be on the internet and know what to do, if you Google, "I'll never go back," Chief Shoefoot.
Okay.
It's a video I made with him many years ago.
I'll never go back.
I'll never go back.
Chief Shoefoot.
If you just Google that, it'll bring up that video.
Okay.
And it's him sharing his testimony of coming to Christ, and he talks about seeing heaven and what heaven is like. I mean, when he was a witch doctor, he could describe what heaven is like.
Wow.
And that's all I'll tell you. That's all I'll tell you right now, because you need to watch that and hear his description of the noises that all the beings there make, worshiping the what he called the enemy god. But anyway, I got
you know what? It's exciting because we know Mike, we know his wife before she passed away, Renee, who grew up here at camp, and Don's been a part of the camp ministry for years, and now just God's using him in tremendous ways around the world. I mean, how many countries are you in right now?
Well, we've ministered in 38 different countries.
Now, wait a minute. You're a trumpet player. You're a trumpet player.
You know what I found out?
What?
I can play my trumpet in French.
All right, very good.
I can play my trumpet in Russian. I can play my trumpet in Polish. I can play my trumpet in
So
Yanomamo.
God's used the trumpet. He's used the trumpet.
Yeah.
And
Moses had a staff. I got a trumpet.
Yeah.
That's what God uses in my life to open up doors, and it's amazing. I have been invited to places that no Christian evangelist would ever be invited, no missionary would ever be invited, because of the trumpet. They want me to come and play my horn. And when I play my horn, I just tell them, hey, I do Christian music, and I'll explain to you every song I'm playing. And so I'm able to share the gospel in places that they've actually invited me to come into Muslim areas and Hindu areas.
Now this is
amazing.
Played all over the world. So if somebody hears this and wants to invite you to play the trumpet in their hometown, how do they get a hold of you?
Well, if you know my name, Don Shire, Shire, you just kind of Google on that, and you'll find me eventually. Okay. But Don at donshire.com works. Okay.
Very good. Because, what's interesting to me is this trumpet of his has opened up so many doors. I'm going to say your trumpet has started orphanages, started homes for widows. It's like, remember when you don't remember when I was a kid, but when I was a kid, I used to read this. My favorite book was Mr. Jeepinary.
Never heard of it. That's before my time, must be.
No, it wasn't before your time. But it was a book about a Jeep that basically, it was a missionary Jeep, and it would tell stories of the missionary adventures from the Jeep's perspective.
Uh-huh.
I loved that story. If anyone out there can find Mr. Jeepinary books, I want them. I want to reread them.
It's funny because I've thought about writing a book about my trumpet case.
That's what I was just thinking. The trumpet that started a mission work, the trumpet that started an orphanage, the trumpet. As I've talked to Don and I've had him talk to the students here at Nicolet Bible Institute, it's the thrill of life is walking with God, being a normal human being and saying, God, use me wherever you want to use me, and watching him do it. Am I right?
Yeah. So many times we think we're not qualified. I'm not qualified to travel internationally to share Jesus. Well, yes, you are. Anyone that knows Jesus and loves Jesus is qualified to go talk about Jesus. And what you need to understand, it might not be to masses. It might not be to 1,000 people, but you might go into an orphanage and love some children and be a Christian example to them and teach them what it's like to know Jesus. I have never taken and I've taken thousands of people on mission trips, but I've never taken anyone that really didn't feel as though there wasn't anything for them to do.
Right.
There's always a place to plug in.
Yeah, I remember his trumpet once. I was with him in Africa, and he told me to stand on a stump and give a gospel message. And as I stood on the stump, I wasn't standing on it yet. He was standing on it, playing his trumpet to gather everybody.
I drew the crowd, and then you talked to him.
And it's like, stand up on the stump and talk. It's like I don't even have a message prepared at that point. It's like, stand up and give a message. So I did. It was one of those very interesting moments, but it wasn't. I could have stood up on that stump forever and talked, and I don't know if anyone would have stopped by and listened. But the trumpet, the ordinary thing that when you were a kid you took lessons on, no doubt. You went through the musical part of that. You were good at the trumpet, there's no doubt. But
Dave, I think that part of it, because I don't really consider myself a great speaker, but I'm okay on the trumpet. And I go into prisons and I play my trumpet first. Now, I just spoke with the students over here. I played my trumpet first. And it gives me credibility.
Right.
And all of a sudden, they're ready to listen to what you have to say. And I've noticed that, like I say, in prisons, they'll come in and they're kind of looking at me like, what's this all about? And I'll play a song, and now I've got them listening to what I have to share.
Yeah.
And, I guess anyone watching today, I would just encourage you, okay, so you don't play trumpet. What do you have?
Right.
What can you use? Moses had a staff. I have a trumpet. So what do you have? Use it.
Yeah. Well, I feel the same way. There's been so many times where I've been invited places. If you haven't noticed, I have a deeper voice than many. And wherever I go, that deep voice is recognized. And I thought, I didn't do anything for that. I really didn't do anything for that. It's just, but I use it on radio and do different programs. And and speak. And the fun part is, I know I didn't do anything for that. It just opens doors for you to go and talk to people about something. And the only thing worthwhile to talk to people about that can change their life is the Lord Jesus Christ, and knowing and understanding his love and his forgiveness. And I'm telling you, the world needs people. The world needs God. And if you want to get in on what God's doing, you need to understand how to use your gifts and abilities so that God would use you in various places around the world, in your neighborhood, whatever it might be. I said a young man asked me how to be prepared to give an answer to every man in his own community. He said, do you stand up and yell at them? What do you do to help people understand that God loves them? Because we're supposed to be prepared to give an answer to every man. And as I was talking to him, I said, well, it says to be prepared to give an answer. He said, well, how much of my testimony do I give? I said, well, you give enough to satisfy the need that's there and let God lead you. For example, if you're talking to an 8-year-old and you're a mass murderer, you probably could skip the mass murdering part, at this point. You can talk to him about something else. You can talk to him about the sinful condition that he's in and you're in, and that you understand God's mercy and grace. If you're talking to somebody your age group, or you're talking to somebody in a prison, you might say something differently. It's not that you're lying, it's just you think, let the Spirit use me appropriately and say something that actually will lead this person to God. And I think you've seen that no matter where you go in the world.
And even being an encouragement to believers. There are some places that I go where they don't know very many Christians. There just aren't very many.
Right.
And just to come in and be an encouragement. I'm thinking of a story here in Honduras. We were going to be doing an evangelistic meeting in the evening, and there was a boy, I'm going to guess he was around 12, 13 years old, who wanted to learn how to play trumpet. And he had already started, but he wasn't very good. And I just went and sat down with him, and in my limited Spanish, I gave him a few lessons and some things to practice, and said, I'm helping you because I want you to use this for the Lord someday, and so, he listened to everything I said, and I probably spent 15 or 20 minutes with him. And we had our meeting that night, and then about, I'm going to guess 12, 13 years later, we went back to that same village up in the mountains, and I went to check into the hotel, and the guy behind the counter jumped over the counter and gave me a big hug. Donaldo,
Oh, really?
I've been waiting for you. And I'm thinking, I don't know this guy, and he says, do you remember me? And I said, I'm sorry, but I don't. He says, remember the boy who you helped with the trumpet? That's me. And I said, oh, okay, yeah, now I remember. And he said, I want you to see something. And he ran behind the counter and grabbed his trumpet case and got his trumpet out. He wanted me to see his trumpet. He said, you told me to use my trumpet for the Lord. He said, I want you to know I am a member of an evangelistic team that travels all over Honduras, winning people for Jesus Christ. And he said, I want to thank you. I've been waiting for you to come so I could thank you for your encouragement.
Wow.
15 minutes.
Yep.
And so that's why I say, maybe you might be called to go somewhere and you think, well, what did I do? You might have spent 15 minutes that could change hundreds and hundreds of lives with the outcome.
One of the things I really encourage our students at Nicolet Bible Institute to do is to get in the habit of looking at people, looking them in the eye, praying for them.